Now we'll just let these candy apples sit until they harden.
Hi there, and welcome to Baseball by Design. I am SportsLogos.net minor league baseball correspondent Paul Caputo, broadcasting live, as always, from the Sunday Helmet Hall of Fame in my basement in Fort Collins, Colorado. Today we are going to be talking about the Marion Hungry Mothers, a new collegiate summer level team that plays in Marion, Virginia. Later on in this episode, I will be speaking with Britton Peck, who is the designer who created their brand. You'd know him from the Carolina Disco Turkeys fame. And I will be speaking with Kevin McDonald, who is at Hungry Mother State Park in Virginia. And of course, Dan Simon will be here with one of his Studio Simon Stumpers. Right now, I'm so pleased to have the managing partner for the Marion Hungry Mothers, Terry Hindle. Terry, good morning. How are you doing?
Good morning, Paul. I'm doing great.
This is such a fun and unique name. It's a name that gets people's attention for sure. Let's jump right in. What is a Hungry Mother? Why is that a name that a baseball team in Marion, Virginia would have?
Well, that's a great question. And when I first heard it, I thought the same thing. But digging a little deeper into the history of it, I got pretty excited about the name because there was a lot of underlying meaning there. And I'm going to paraphrase the story, but basically it's a story of a mother and her child leaving a settlement that had been under attack and going to another settlement. And the mother ends up starving to death on the journey to the other settlement. The child continues. And when she gets to the other settlement, the only thing she could say is she would point in the direction of where her mother was, and she would say, "Hungry mother." And for me, that underlying meaning there is thinking about that mother, forgoing her comfort, her food, just to make sure that her child was able to live. And if you equate that to a baseball team, there's a lot of analogies that can be drawn from that. Self-sacrifice, a guy coming up to the plate, doing a sacrifice bunt to move a runner over. Doing things like that, supporting your teammates, but also it's a strong tie to the region, not only the community, but the region.
So this is a new team, hasn't taken the field yet. At the time of this recording, you all have not taken the field yet, right?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. What has the reaction been to the new name and we'll talk to Britton Peck about the artwork. What's the reaction been there in the community?
It's been, I would say, overall very positive. When I'm talking to people, especially baseball people, and I'll say the name, there's usually a pause, and then you get a smile, or they sort of get it, but it's different.
It is certainly a name that conjures, it has sort of like you do a double take because it almost sounds like there's another word coming, or like it sort of conjures another idea. And then, as you were talking about, and we'll get into more in this episode later, there is an actual story of an actual human mother who was involved here. And then you all made the decision to go with, this bear character that Britton created. How did you arrive at, this name that has this sort of funny implication when you hear it of, that's almost like an off-color phrase that someone might use when they're mad, all the way to we have this like Berenstain Bear style, like cartoon bear that is our mascot. A female bear, no less. How did you get to the cartoon bear as the identity for this team?
Wow, Paul. If I understand that question correctly,
it was a long question. It had a lot of parts. I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. And being, a baseball guy, a lover of the sport, it makes you think. And I firmly believe that similarities don't sell, differences sell. And this is definitely different.
It sure is. It sure is. One of the storylines with this team is that you're bringing baseball back to a town, Marion, Virginia, that has had baseball in the past, and this is sort of the triumphant return of baseball to that town. How has that been with the town, like working with the community itself? How excited are they to have, just baseball back in general?
Paul, I could not imagine a town, an area that has been more welcoming, more receptive, and more helpful than what the people in that community have been. Um, they're as excited as we are. Um, they have a deep history in baseball, going back to the 50s and 60s and 70s, with the New York Mets having their rookie ball team there. So it's been awesome.
You said that differences sell, similarities don't sell. And I really like that because there's a lot of differences here. You're working, with an illustrator in Britton Peck who has done some work in minor league baseball, but that's not his main gig. He does a lot of other illustrative work. And so even just sort of like the visual style of the brand, this sort of different nickname. One of the curiosities I have when I see, especially a collegiate summer level team that has such a distinctive brand, is that something you can use in recruiting players? Is it something that the players care about, or are there other circumstances that the players care more about? Can you, like, when you're recruiting a player for this team, can you go and be like, you got to come here, look at this awesome cartoon bear hat you're going to get to wear?
um, uh, Not exactly. That's not exactly the pitch, but one of the things that's really come across in talking with young men from the area, but also talking to players that are out of the area. One of the big selling points is they have the opportunity, if they're from the area, to come home and play in front of their friends and family. Whereas prior to this, they were playing on a summer league team that might have been two or three states away, and it was very difficult for friends and family to come see them play. So they're very excited about that. The pride in their own community, where they're from.
Did you work at all with the folks, or did you communicate at all with the folks from the state park, or were there other folks in the community who were sort of instrumental in this conversation?
As far as I know, the Board of Tourism, the state government has been very involved with us. Basically, they partnered with us bringing this team to Marion.
One of my favorite things about minor league baseball is the way that it can draw attention to a community like that. I mean, for me, I I lived in Virginia for 10 years. I did not know that there was a Hungry Mother State Park. This story is brand new to me. And so you're really calling attention to this park and to this community. What has that process been for you, working with a community that, like you say, is proud, and you're telling this story that people might not necessarily be familiar with about that community?
There's a lot there, Paul. There truly is, and I think we're really just getting started and peeling that onion. To give you an example, the day that we were doing the press conference, I got into Marion very, very late the night before, and I pulled into a hotel where I didn't have a reservation. No problem getting a reservation. And the person that was checking me in asked me, "Well, what brings you to Marion?" And and up until then, I was really sworn to secrecy about talking a lot about these things. And I told him, I said, "We're bringing baseball back to Marion," and I didn't tell him the team name, but I told him where we were going to play and what kind of team it was. And this is at 1:45 in the morning. He gets this big smile on his face, and he looks at me right in the eye, and he says, Nolan Ryan played his rookie ball here, right? And that moment, I knew we were in the right place. This is a baseball town,
Yeah.
and I think they've been hungry for it. Pardon the pun. Um, and the reception from the players. It's been one of the easiest recruiting jobs I've had. I live in Greensboro, and talking to people that I know about the team in Marion, and there's a lot of people that want to come check it out.
Mm-hmm.
There's a theater there called the Lincoln Theater, which is a historic bluegrass venue. They have the Heart of the South there, and I think this might not only be a great activity for people for locals there. I think it'll bring business to the town.
You mentioned that it is a baseball town. You mentioned Nolan Ryan. The Marion Mets played there from 1965 to 1976. But you're going to be playing in historic Hurricane Stadium, which goes all the way back to 1955. So you've got this 70-year-old stadium. I hope my math is right there. Yeah, you've got this 70-year-old stadium that, with this brand new team, which is an interesting sort of juxtaposition there. What's it been like as you're getting ready for the season to sort of to move into this 70-year-old ballpark, this historic ballpark that has all this heritage around it, and you've got this brand new team sort of moving in and taking that space?
Well, it's exciting, and I guess, Paul, one of the things that is very important to us is to honor that heritage. We're really excited about doing that. Even with the name having a direct tie locally, we wanted to get a coach that had ties to the area, and we were able to do that with Coach McMillan. He's from Carroll County, which is right next door. This is going to be Southwest Virginia's team.
How many times have you had to tell that story of where the name comes from? How many times have you told the story of the actual Hungry Mother that the state park is based on?
I'm a math guy, Paul, and I have lost count.
All right, last question for you, Terry. This is near and dear to my heart here. This is an important question to me. Are you going to sell the little ice cream helmets with the Hungry Mother's logo on it?
I really hope so. I really hope so. That's a great idea.
Terry, this has been really fun to talk to you about this. This is such a fun brand. I know that you guys are really busy getting ready for the upcoming season. Your season may have started by the time this drops. In the meantime, Terry, where can people find that store? Where can people find your schedule? Where can people find the Marion Hungry Mothers?
HungryMothersBaseball.com.
I have to tell you, Terry, I knew the answer to that question because I was on the store already, but I wanted to let you answer. It's HungryMothersBaseball.com. I was checking out the T-shirts and whatnot there. Terry, thank you so much. Best of luck in your preparations, and I can't wait to see the Hungry Mothers on the field.
Paul, thank you so much. I appreciate you very much.
All right, everyone, welcome back. I'm so pleased to welcome back to the podcast artist and illustrator Britton Peck, who you'll remember from the episode that we did on the disco turkeys, Carolina disco turkeys. Britton, good morning. How are you doing? Welcome back.
Good morning. I'm doing great, and thanks for having me back.
Well, it's really fun to talk to you about the really fun work that you do. We were just talking before we started the interview here that much of the work that you do is fine art, illustration, not necessarily, specific to baseball. In fact, baseball is probably a very small percentage of the work that you do. With the sports branding that you've done, you definitely have a very distinctive style. It's different from, I think, your illustrative work. Obviously, the Carolina Disco Turkeys is a notable brand that you've done. You did their Yacht Rockers alternate identity. The Wampus Cats is another one. And now this Hungry Mothers brand, a very distinctive, simple, illustrative style that, like I said, is different from, the other work on your site. Is there a reason that, when you do a sports branding project, when you do the Hungry Mothers, when you do the Carolina Disco Turkeys, that you have this sort of simpler approach than what you see with the illustrations on your website?
Yeah, I think well, a lot of branding elements. I'm always thinking about how they're going to read from far away. So think about like when a team would be deciding a hat, for example. I think kind of hats are where I really, even though that's not the only element, it's sort of the iconic element that I think is a lot of times the go-to one. It's sort of what emblem is on the hat. it's what the players are wearing. It's one of the main merchandise items. So like for Hungry Mothers, for example, I've done an illustrated kind of the mama bear is what I'm calling her. She doesn't have a name quite yet, the mascot, but I did, there's two main ones that I've done for the Hungry Mothers. There's this kind of side view of, the full character, kind of getting ready to swing a bat. And then there's one of the mama bear facing forwards. And that one is more intended as the hat emblem, but it's more of an alternate hat. The primary hat for the Hungry Mothers is a really kind of blocky HM. And so in thinking about those two, as much as I, am an illustrator and I kind of, base my work in illustration, when I put those two next to each other, to me, the HM really represents the team and is so clearly visible from further away. And it almost feels like it existed before I worked on it, And so when something is compelling in that way, I kind of, I go with that. And then any illustration I'm doing for sports branding, I'm always kind of looking at it more as like kind of an icon.
So this logo is centered around the bear character that you were just describing. I'm gonna ask you a really basic question here. Where'd the bear character come from?
So it started with the name, which the name came from, again, working with Greg Sullivan on these teams. Greg is really fun to work with, and he gives me like really great names to work with. And with this one, it's similar. It's like, hey, I'm working on a new team, and I was like, oh, cool, what is it? And he told me, leaning towards Hungry Mothers, and I was like, what is that? So he told me, about the state park, and so I thought just visually, like, okay, where do you even start with, that, and definitely don't want to make it into anything offensive or kind of misogynist because it's dealing with a woman character, but I really liked that aspect. I really liked that for a male baseball team that it would have a female character. I thought that was really interesting. So knowing that it was a state park and it's a Virginia state park and it's so it's got a nature element to it, and I just started to think like, okay, what would kind of bring to life visually the idea of a mother, a hungry mother. And so I thought about a mama bear is just sort of this, it's kind of a cultural, term that we know people use every now and then, but it's also a mother who is very respected. Like if you see a mama bear, ever since I was little, people said, if you're out in the woods and on a hike or something and you see a bear, you clearly want to be careful. But if you see a mom and a cub, you like really want to approach that very differently because the mom is, going to do whatever she needs to protect her baby. So this idea of a mama bear being a really fierce, respected character kind of seemed to work. And then when you add in a hungry mother, it's like, whoa, that's like, she's definitely going to do, she's going to be pretty fierce. So, I pitched that idea to Greg. I said, well, yeah, what if we bring to life a hungry mother as a mama bear? And he liked it. And then it started kind of led to, well, how do we portray visually a mother without kind of getting into sort of some problematic imagery? Some things that we ruled out, we didn't want to do. Like as an illustrator, some of the go-to as an illustrator, you a lot of times rely on not derogatory stereotypes, but you rely on a stereotype in the sense that you need something that kind of gets a meaning across quickly. So we rely on, things that reference things clearly. So like if you put glasses on a person, that has like meaning, like we associate cultural meaning with something like glasses. It's not bad or offensive or anything. It's just that it has cultural meaning to it.
I want to point out for the listener at home that to me, I associate glasses with intelligence. I think that's the stereotype that we're talking about here.
Mhm.
As we're recording this, it's an audio medium, and so people can't see this. Britton is wearing glasses and I am not. So in this room right now, Britton is the smart one if we're talking about visual stereotypes here.
I'm gonna take my glasses off so I can't see. Like what way could I quickly make a character that you would see on a hat or on a t-shirt and you would you would say, okay, that's a mother, how does it not only look female, but how does it look like maternal? So I started to look at, okay, what could it be? And thought about, well, a lot of times eyelashes are more associated with female characters, different traditionally female hairstyles, makeup, things like that. But none of those things really felt like things Greg and I really kind of wanted to do with the character. So yeah, we actually looked at the Berenstain Bears, the mama bear from Berenstain Bears, and some different Bugs Bunny kind of early Looney Tunes mom characters, and they a lot of times would wear this kind of like nightgown and these like kind of like sleeping cap type things that I think are mostly for kind of keeping your hair somewhat, intact while you're sleeping. If you have long hair and it not getting all tangled up while you sleep. And so yeah, this cap and this nightgown kind of became the main symbols that we use for the bear to feel like a mama bear. And so then when we found that and that felt started to feel kind of right and felt like kind of the language that we wanted to be speaking, we really were excited that this polka dot pattern kind of became a cool element. And we're like, all right, we got to keep the polka dots. Like that's just kind of different. And so yeah, just sort of considering all these things and it kind of was hitting a lot of the notes that we like to play with, which is like, if I can ever make something that feels like it existed before me, that's like a good feeling. I like things that I really like to look at things that like that look like they're logos from the earlier 1900s or the mid 1900s.
The points that you were making about having a female character as part of the branding for a male baseball team, that's really interesting to me, right? Like, and the only other one that I can think of in minor league baseball is the Mary Washington logo in the Fred Nats suite of logos. We have George Washington and his mother Mary are both characters in that suite of logos. Were there any other precedents that you found? Were there any other examples that you could find of obviously female characters in branding for male sports teams?
I hadn't thought of the national one that you mentioned, but the one that I was just thinking about before we started talking was the Toledo Mud Hens. It's a little more subtle because it's not, a person. It's just, a hen, versus like the Mud Roosters.
Hmm.
There's a one that got a lot of attention, the Udders, the one that was
Oh, yeah.
the
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 Udder
udder.
Tuggers.
Udder, yeah, yeah.
The Udder Tuggers of the
Um,
Wisconsin Timber Rattlers. Absolutely.
Yeah, so the Mud Hens is one that I like that between those two, just to compare those two. I kind of I hope that Hungry Mothers comes across more like, even though it is clearly a mother is clearly a female, and a hen is clearly female, but you don't think about it as quickly. Like at least when I hear the word mother and hear the word hen.
Hmm.
Um, Mother to me more quickly comes out as a female character. Like in a
Hmm.
hen, I kind of have to think, all right, that's a female chicken.
Right.
Between those two, the udder tuggers, I think, and then the mud hens, I hope that Hungry Mothers feels a little bit more like the mud hens, where yeah, it's clearly a female character, but it's a little less like direct and kind of like that, and then also too as the logo designer, Udder Tuggers was like kind of played up. I think the way that they drew the character felt like they used a little bit more kind of female symbolism to kind of like intentionally feel more, and it was part of sort of the story of that character. Where if you look at the mud hens, the old mud hens, and the new one does too, with like the batting pose with like the one raised leg. I don't know, it feels very old school and I've always, as a kid, the Toledo Mud Hen has always been a favorite of mine. I thought that little hen was really cool. And another thing I do like about the Mud Hens real quick is that as a kid, I know the word hen is female, but the character, the Mud Hen's character doesn't look noticeably female.
Right.
That like there's nothing about it that's like, oh, that's a girl playing baseball. It's a baseball player about to take a swing. And with the Hungry Mothers, that was my hope too, is that other than wearing the nightgown and a nightcap, the polka dot thing that the Berenstain Bears Mama Bear wears, she doesn't the Mama Bear Hungry Mothers logo doesn't look. I mean, she looks like she's ready to play ball. Like she's very angry and ready to swing a bat. So I like that aspect of it too.
So one last question before I let you get out of here, Britton, is that you mentioned, that the name that Greg Sullivan came to you with this sort of funny name. I don't know, when you hear the expression hungry mother, unless you're talking specifically about that story from Hungry Mother State Park, a hungry mother sounds like the beginning of a phrase that might have another word on the end of it and could be, applied to anybody. So it is a little bit funny, and it seems like when you first hear the name, until you get to the actual branding, you're not necessarily sure that you're actually dealing with a female character there. So was there any temptation as you were creating this brand to play off a more maybe risque or colorful interpretation of the phrase hungry mother?
Um, no, I love though that I like that the name brings that up is so perfect. And we love that aspect of it too when Greg brought it up. And yeah, I but no real temptation to try to do anything visually with that. But I think since launching the name and the brand, we've already gotten, some people online who say, how dare you name a male team after a female character? Like there's just something, the internet will say the internet's cool because it's like it just sort of shows you the like if it can be thought by a human being, it will be thought by a human being and it will be expressed, so it's cool that it just sort of flushes out every possible. So it's like, oh right, I guess that is an option that we could have, okay, great that we know, it's like thank you. But then no. We're not going to worry too much about it. But no, you saying that about that association and how the term hungry mother can have like when we use it, it can have like a non-gendered at all. It just sort of mean like if you say, oh, that's a bad mother,
Right.
like you don't need to finish the whole phrase. If people when they hear and use the term hungry mother, especially the 19-year-old college boys that'll be wearing it on their chest when they play. I do love that there's that association with the name. It's got another angle to it that I think, people kind of can enjoy that part too. That's a good thing, I think.
Britton, there's so much more that we could talk about with this brand. There's so much that went into it. I have to just say, I'll throw this out there at the risk of going down this rabbit hole. I love the typography. I love the sort of tall, skinny, all caps, as sort of friendly, rounded sans serif all caps, and then you've got like the slab serif on the Hungry Mothers and the interlocking HM. Typography is great. I am going to ask you this question before we get out because we talked a little bit about this off air. The red, it's largely centered around red, this brand. Where did the red come from?
Yeah, so the stadium in Marion, the town's based in, or, sorry, the team is based in the town of Marion, Virginia. It's a small town in Western Virginia, getting real close to Tennessee and West Virginia, and they've got this beautiful stadium. The high school uses it. It's also used as a football stadium. So it's one of those like it's a real kind of treat that the team gets to play there. It will, I guess I'll say I see it as a treat to get to work with a team that's in this really cool stadium. It's got a lot of history, but in the stadium, they've got I think it's the outfield wall and some of the walls maybe of some of the dugouts are painted red. So when Greg kind of presents to me these these fun assignments and challenges, he said, "Oh man, you got to see the." I haven't been to Marion, but he said you got to see these pictures, and you can see mountains in the outfield, or right behind the outfield wall, and it's beautiful, and it sits in this kind of bowl. So with that red in the stadium, we said, "Oh, well, we got to go with red," and seems like it's sort of associated almost as like the town color, kind of unofficially.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'd be very kind of I feel like it's just not my place to come in and be like, nope, paint it all blue, or something like that.
You're teal now.
Right. So no, in red, I've heard some psychological association with red and fast food. There's a lot of I've
Hmm.
heard there's a reason a lot of fast food is has red, and so I've enjoyed just sort of like finding all different ways to express the word hungry, and
Yeah.
so if red helps kind of get like an eager, urgent kind of hunger feeling.
Well, like I said, Britton, listeners of this podcast know that when I say I have one more question for you, that usually means there's like at least three more questions and then another 10 minutes of conversation. Britton, where can people find the work that you do, not just baseball, but all of your work online?
Thank you. Yeah, so I've got a website, brittonpeck.com, and then I just use Britton Peck on social media as well.
Well, Britton, thank you. This has been so much fun. I look forward to another Britton Peck design so we can get you back on the podcast.
Thanks, Paul.
All right, take care, Britton. Have a good one.
Thanks, you too.
All right, everyone, welcome back. I am so thrilled right now to have the park manager from Hungry Mother State Park in Virginia, Kevin McDonald. Kevin, good morning. How are you doing?
Good morning, Paul. I'm doing just fine. I'm opening my day in a state park. It can't be too bad, can it?
That is absolutely true. I lived in Virginia for 10 years, absolutely loved it. What a beautiful state. Marion, Virginia is obviously the home of Hungry Mother State Park. We'll get into the origin of the name Hungry Mother State Park, but if you would, just so I can live vicariously through you for a moment here, what are the opportunities at Hungry Mother State Park? What does someone do when they come to the park for the day?
Yeah, of course. I appreciate you wanting to highlight some of that stuff for us too. So, Hungry Mother State Park is one of the original 6 state parks in Virginia. So, it was built by the CCC back in the early 30s. So, there's a lot of history and cultural history and all of that people enjoy learning about as we come out here. We have a very robust interpretive program that offers multiple programs throughout the summer, pretty much Memorial Day to Labor Day is obviously our peak times. So, we actually have a lot of locals that will come to the park every year because we try to always have a new slate of programs for returning guests. And so the biggest one that I always like to say to folks when I try to describe Hungry Mother State Park is if you can think about something that you could do or want to do in a state park, we offer it. So we are one of the few larger parks in the system that you can spend your day kayaking. You can take a walk on or over 25 miles of trails within the parks. You could rent a boat to go out on the lake, and then you could have a nice a meal at our concession stand while also staying in the park itself. So we have 32 cabins and lodges. We have 3 campgrounds. Like I told, we rent boats. We have stand-up paddle boards. We have kayaks. We have rowboats, or excuse me, not rowboats, paddle boats. And we also have a beach. And then, like I said, we have trails for hiking and biking. There's no horse trails in the park. There used to be, but there are not anymore. So we have hiking and biking trails. We have an interpretive department, like I said, but we also have interpretive displays here at our main office. We have, to my knowledge, I think the only hellbender that is in captivity from a state park,
All right.
which is something that I'm very passionate about because it's a species. It's the largest salamander on the East Coast or in the Eastern United States, and they've been really having some rough years because of some misconceptions of what they are and the danger that they don't pose to people. But there's an old saying, an old cultural saying with hellbenders that once if you were to catch one or find one, you need to kill it. And so I always like to put in a little plug in there that the hellbender is a wonderful animal. It's an indicator species since it's a large salamander, so it's going to tell you if your water's clean or not. And so that's always nice to have. And they are no threat to any person, place or thing. Their main diet is crayfish crawdads. And so if anybody was to ever be in the area, I would always encourage them to come out and take a look. Our hellbender's name is Hungers, and he does a really good job camouflaging in the tank. But all you got to do is ask one of the folks here at the Discovery Center, and they can point him out for people.
I think it's a missed opportunity right now that there is no minor league baseball team named for the Hellbenders. That is an absolutely great name that salamander, that giant salamander would make such a great logo. And they would be a natural rival, it sounds like, to the Hickory Crawdads.
Yeah, and that actually surprises me that there's not a team that's captured that animal as their mascot yet. So
yeah, we've got the Holly Springs Salamanders, but no one has taken on the Hellbenders. I think
nobody's got that one.
That would be a great logo. The park itself, obviously, the relationship to this team is that the team adopted Hungry Mother for their nickname, Hungry Mothers. The story of the Hungry Mother, and I know that we don't have all of the specifics to it, that there are some different versions to it, but when folks come to Hungry Mother State Park and they ask you the question, hey, where did this park get its name? What's the answer to that question?
So we actually are having a discussion with there's a grad student actually in Appalachian State that's going to help us kind of unearth some of the history behind that story. So the first thing that I always tell people is that is what it is. It is a story. You know, every story kind of has some nuggets of truth, but this one truly I think was a true story that was put out to kind of give some lore and some mystery and everything to the park. And so the version of the story that we tell folks now is that it comes in many forms. It has come in many forms over the years, but the abridged version is pretty much there was a woman and her child, and the pioneer woman's name is Molly. They were able to escape from Native Americans, and they were traveling back towards their settlement. And while they were making their way back to the pioneer, to the settlement to be saved, the woman and her daughter made it all the way to the highest point in the park, which we call Molly's Knob. And the daughter was able to then continue on towards the pioneer, towards the settlement to try to reach safety. But she was so tired and so hungry because they had walked for so long that by the time they were able to go back to look after the mother had perished from starvation. And the reason that it is called Hungry Mothers because the only sentence that the daughter could tell the settlement, the pioneers, was "hungry mother." All she could get out was that her mother was hungry. And so that's the abridged version. We've got a longer version that anybody can find online that kind of details some of that whole thing. But also know that is a true story. There is no real actual fact, or at least none that we've ever been able to find in any literature, that experience happened. It was created to enhance kind of the lore of the park more than anything else.
And then, the team adopted this name and took on, and as we've been talking about on this episode and in prior segments, they took on the identity of this sort of Berenstain Bears style bear character, this mama bear character. Are there bears in the park?
There are. So we have the black bear, which is a very common bear for the Appalachians. We always tell folks there are no danger to you as much as you are to them. They want to get away from anybody as well as any other animal out in the woods. Any interactions that a bear is going to have with the human population as a whole, the bear is just looking for a meal that is not a person. It's usually their hot dogs and their buns and their candy and all that stuff that they will try to get to. Thankfully, over the years, and I'm going to knock on the wood desk here, we have done a lot of efforts to educate the public, but also to have signage and have our camp hosts educate folks as well to do those small things to keep the trash out of the hands of the bears. And we have not had any interactions between a human and a bear. That's been a close proximity one here, I think, for at least a couple of years.
So when the team was developing this name, and they obviously wanted to play on the name Hungry Mother, was there any relationship? Was there any communication between the team and the park?
There wasn't, and I don't say that necessarily with in a bad way, but we were not included in that conversation. It does not surprise me if folks drive downtown Marion. Of course, the name or the term Hungry Mother is all over the place, so it is very synonymous with the town of Marion and what the localities hold. And I know that we've had folks that have come out to the park even, and have asked that same question. So there was no real back and forth for it. I am thrilled that they are using the name. Any opportunity to kind of to amplify that name for us is always a bonus. And I already know just from some of the information that I've gathered from that baseball team and how they're going to come to town. I'll be taking my kids out there because I think that's going to be a great experience, a good local experience where they can get really close to the players in the game and really start to hopefully grow that love, because I've loved my baseball my whole life.
I appreciate hearing that. That you're going to get the kids out to the game, and I'm a huge baseball fan myself, but I would think that that this would bring a certain amount, in as much as a collegiate summer level baseball team is going to generate publicity. This name sort of made a splash out there in the minor league baseball world. Are you hearing from people who you might not have otherwise heard from because of this team?
There's definitely been a few phone calls and people coming in that have asked, that have seen those advertisements. A lot of it has probably been directed more towards the town of Marion, because the town of Marion's pushing a lot of the nuances of it. And so I know I've had some tertiary conversations, of course, through some of those people. And obviously I'm not paid nor endorsed by that team, but I do always try to say that it's a wonderful connection. It's a wonderful opportunity for local people, and it should be fairly accessible and achievable, because the price point is going to be so much lower than if we were to try to go watch even a minor league game, or even, of course, a major league game. I think anybody that I've talked to out in the public so far that has talked about it, usually, of course, I will front it by saying the name is obviously synonymous with our park name, but there is no affiliation, there is no connection. But I'll fly the flag to have as many people go out and watch a good game of baseball as I can.
I live walking distance from the Fort Collins Foxes here in Colorado, and they're a collegiate
Okay.
summer level team as well. And it is a fun way to spend an afternoon. It's college level players who are really good, right? Like these are very good baseball players. So it is a great way to spend an afternoon and a great way to experience baseball. You said you're into baseball. What's your team?
Unfortunately, it's been the Detroit Tigers. I'm actually from Michigan, and so I have always loved the Detroit Tigers. It's been a challenging couple of years for them, and then my father, him and my brother are big Chicago Cubs fans, and so of
Oh,
course a couple of years ago when they finally pulled it off, one for the ages. That was my dad always would say, he can die happy after watching that. So if I'm not pulling for the Tigers, I'm usually pulling for the Cubs as well.
I like that. So long as they don't meet in the World Series, I think that's a safe way to be.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I've always loved going to the times that I can remember when we went to Wrigley Field. That stadium is just it's got so much history and culture and interest just in the facility itself. I always love going there.
And the neighborhood too. Yeah, everything about
Mhm.
Wrigley is so much fun. Kevin, thank you so much for hopping on. This has really been a lot of fun to get the park's perspective, get your perspective from the park on this team name. Where can people go to find more information about the park? What are the opportunities for people who want to experience the park, or anything else that the park has to offer that we haven't talked about?
Yeah, of course. So we had talked a little bit about the overnight facilities and the trails and interpretation and outdoor education and all the things that a state park usually hangs its hat on. But one thing that I always like to talk about from something that is unique, at least in my opinion, to Hungry Mother State Park is we are, to my knowledge, we're the only state park now that has a special events facility that we can also cater and cook for people for. It offers an opportunity for folks that want to come out to have a wedding or a family reunion, but it also offers opportunities for corporations and businesses and nonprofits to come and do their training. I always try to put that plug in. If anybody has any questions about that, they can call our main office there at 276-781-7400 and just ask for that special events department, and they can point them in that direction. If you just wanted some basic information on the park and regulations and availability and all of those things, please by all means visit our website, which would be www.dcr.virginia.gov, and it's just /state parks /Hungry Mother. Go into Google, type in Hungry Mother, it'll pull it up a lot faster.
So if you have a corporate event or you're getting married and you want to catch some collegiate summer level baseball, it sounds like Marion, Virginia is the place to go.
Oh man, you could get everything. You'd have the state park experience. You'd have baseball. You could go downtown and eat some good food. And we're stones thrown away from Mount Rogers recreation area as well as Grayson Highland State Park. And so if this was the place to stay, and then you kind of satellite from here to experience all that Southwest Virginia, but also Smith County has to offer, this is a gold mine. You could stay here for probably 6 months and not experience everything that we have to offer.
One of the original 6 state parks in Virginia. That's cool. I like that fact too. Kevin, thank you so much. We'll put the link and the phone number in the show notes so you can go grab those there so you didn't have to write them down during the podcast here. Kevin, thanks so much. I hope to catch you when we make it out to Marion for a Hungry Mothers baseball game.
Absolutely, Paul. I appreciate your time. I had a lot of fun talking with you about it.
All right, everyone, welcome back. It is time once again for Studio Simon Stumpers, in which Dan Simon, designer extraordinaire, and my good friend and road trip pal, brings us a trivia question related to the team at hand. This week, we are talking about the Marion Hungry Mothers, whose nickname is based on a nearby state park and a possibly apocryphal historical story. Dan, good morning. Hello, how are you?
Good morning to you, Paul. I am fantastic. How are things with you on this beautiful morning?
It is a beautiful morning, and we get to talk about baseball and logos. My Phillies are sort of spinning their wheels a little bit right now, but, that's going to happen. You're going to have ups and downs throughout the course of the season. You just got to hope that the overall arch is positive. Hey, at least we're not the Rockies, who at the time of this recording are 4-20, which I assume is leading to a bunch of pot jokes about Colorado, which, as you know, is kind of a peccadillo of mine.
Maybe they should change their name to the Blackbirds, 4-20 Blackbirds.
Ah, see, that's perfect. See, they should be doing that instead. That's the only non-pot related 4-20 joke that anyone will have made about the Rockies.
Yeah. But back to the Hungry Mothers.
Yeah.
When when I am working on a sports brand identity development project, the great majority of the time, the artwork I am doing is reflective of the nickname of the team. If it's the Columbus Clingstones, the artwork is a peach. If it's the Kannapolis Cannonballers, the artwork is the human cannonball, et cetera, et cetera. In very rare instances, is a whole identity based on the geographic designation. Like, for instance, the Louisville Bats, I don't think any of the artwork has anything to do with Louisville, but there are times when at least maybe a secondary logo, when we're looking for some more tools for the toolbox of the brand identity system we're putting together, and we might want to include another logo or two. We might look to something about the city as inspiration for one of the logos. And in this case, what we're going to do is we're going to look to the city, the geographic designation of this particular team that is being featured in this episode for our studio, Simon Stumper. So,
Okay.
with that very long lead in, Marion, Virginia is named after Revolutionary War militia leader, Brigadier General Sir Francis Marion. Did that come up in your discussions?
No.
Okay.
No, we talked mostly about bears and the Hungry Mother story. So the origin of the name of Marion did not come up. One of the other things, Dan, I don't mean to interject here, but one of the other things we came up with was the fact that there are not that many primary logos of baseball teams based on female characters. And I don't know if you were planning on talking about that, but we have your Fred Nats, who have, of course, Mary Washington, George Washington's mother, and now this Berenstain Bears style bear from the Marion Hungry Mothers. So that we talked about that sort of thing. We did not talk about Marion.
Did you even think about it, or did you just not even give it any thought, like why the city's called Marion?
No, I just thought that's the name of the city. Marion is what that city is called. I lived in Virginia for 10 years, and I didn't really. Marion was not it's not a big urban center, right? Like, so it's not a place that we give a lot of thought to.
Okay, well, listeners, I think we have mentioned this in the past, but Paul and I both grew up in a town called Wayne, which was also, now you in Wayne, Pennsylvania, me in Wayne, New Jersey, but both of our towns were named after another Revolutionary War general, General Mad Anthony Wayne. So, speaking of Mad Anthony Wayne, our studio Simon Stumper today asks, what was Sir Francis Marion's nickname?
Ooh.
Was it A, Old Blood and Guts, B, the Swamp Fox, or C, the Wild Horse of the Osage?
If I had
The fact that
better,
I'm sorry to interrupt, but the fact that you do not know the answer immediately actually surprises me.
oh, you
because
always say that, and it always makes me feel bad.
I almost thought this one was going to be too easy.
Oh no.
But I'm glad to see it's not. I'm glad to see. I like when you get it, so maybe I would have been glad for that. But I'm glad. I'm looking forward to hearing some sussing here.
Well, I was thinking if I knew where the Osage was specifically, that might either clue me in or discount that as a possibility. The nickname that jumps out as the most sort of common nickname that I definitely recognize as somebody's nickname from history is Old Blood and Guts. Now the question is, was that Sir Francis Marion's nickname or was that somebody else's nickname?
But I will say this. All three of these nicknames were nicknames for historical figures.
Okay.
So they're all legit nicknames of people that you likely have heard of.
Okay. So Old Blood and Guts definitely is a popular nickname. I don't think it was Sir Francis Marion. Swamp Fox, I don't know how swampy southwestern Virginia is. Wild Horse of the Osage. It is sort of horsey country out there. So I'm sort of leaning towards Wild Horse of the Osage. And I'm going to go with it, Dan. even though it was not my first instinct.
So what your first instinct was Old Blood and Guts.
It was.
But that was also the first one you eliminated.
Because it was a knowing that they were all three nicknames for somebody, I was like, oh, that's definitely a nickname. But they're all three definitely nicknames because you confirmed that. So I thought Old Blood and Guts is definitely a nickname, but perhaps not Sir Francis Marion's nickname.
You were correct in that. You were
Okay.
not correct in your final answer, but you're correct in that. Old Blood and Guts is General George S. Patton's nickname.
Yeah.
Now, the correct answer is Swamp Fox. Sir Francis Marion, though this is in Marion, Virginia.
Yeah.
Virginia?
Virginia.
That's the New Yorker in me. Virginia, that was a nickname that he earned for eluding capture after being chased by the British through the Carolina swamps for nearly 7 hours, leading the despaired British lieutenant, who finally gave up pursuit, to say, "As for this damned old fox, the devil himself could not catch him." And I think he said it just like that.
Yeah, it sounded good. I liked your accent.
Okay, but you know what? I can't do a British accent. I'm not good with that. I just was trying to do kind of an old-timey accent. But anyway, boy, it would have been good if I did it with a British accent.
Well, I think that historic reenactments need to be a new segment on Baseball by Design.
Okay. Well, given what you do for a living, you can get your hands on some historical reenactors. So maybe we should do that. You did it for one episode. It was the Frisco Rough Riders.
It certainly was. Yeah.
Theodore Roosevelt himself on.
We had old Teddy carrying his big stick.
So here's the thing. The Wild Horse of the Osage was not a nickname of a military figure. Rather, it was the nickname of Pepper Martin. Do you know who Pepper Martin was?
He played second base, I think, for the...
Yeah. You're shaking your head no, but you answered correctly. Were you going to say who we played second base for?
Definitely played for the New York... I don't know, Dan. Who did he play for?
Okay. I thought you were going to get it there because that information was in your deep recesses and you just retrieved it. I thought maybe you retrieved the team. He starred on the St. Louis Cardinals Gas House Gang Clubs of the 1930s, Pepper Martin.
That's a great baseball name, Pepper Martin. And he was the Wild Horse of the Osage.
Great name, great nickname. So, although Pepper's a nickname too, that wasn't his given name. When my children were about to be born, when my first one was, I brought up the name Pepper for if we were to have a daughter, Pepper, and my wife just immediately said no. And we didn't have a daughter, so it's a moot point.
When we were discussing the possibility of boys' names when my firstborn was on the way, I brought up the idea of Ryan Chase, and for whatever reason, that name was discounted.
Okay.
Keep in mind, it was in 2004 when the Phillies had both Ryan Howard and Chase Utley on their roster.
Oh, I was just thinking some random name, and it's like whatever. But oh yeah, I can't tell you how many baseball names got kicked to the curb. Although both of my sons ended up with baseball names. My first son is Cooper, not short for, but as in Cooperstown, and it's not a coincidence. That's the reason for it. And my second one's Casey, as in Casey Stengel, Casey at the bat, Casey Candell, et cetera, et cetera. Just a baseball name. So
it's a great baseball name, just like Pepper Martin. And now I know Pepper Martin. But Sir Francis Marion was the Swamp Fox, which is also a very good nickname. And possibly, I mean, come on, if they hadn't been the Hungry Mothers, the Marion Swamp Foxes would have been a great name for a team too.
Well, I should point out, now I wish I had thought to confirm this by research before we recorded here, but I believe there was a minor league sports team, not a baseball team, maybe a minor league hockey team called the Swamp Foxes, not necessarily in a city called Marion, but we're going to have to look that up. Or somebody can tweet out if you guys know. But now I'm curious, and this makes for great podcast.
We could talk about all the research we didn't do. Dan, thanks so much, as always. And hey, we'll see you next week for another Studio Simon Stumper.
Looking forward to it. Thanks. See you next week.